Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board number 2 public meeting of February 16th, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a specific project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call, Board Member Garagos is absent this evening. Board Member Keuroghelian.
Here.
Board Member Malekian.
Here.
Board Member Chahe. Here. Chairman Zarifian.
Here.
The report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on February 8th, 2012. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards. Chairman Zarifian, I don't believe you have any oral communication cards as well. No. This brings us to today's agenda. We have one project on tonight's agenda, and at this point in time, I would like to turn the meeting over to the case planner, Dennis Joe, for the introduction and staff report, please.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm going to continue my presentation up at the board. This project case number is 2-PDR 2011-028B. This is at 1062 Eilinita Avenue. This is a second submittal for final review. A return for redesign with comments and conditions was rendered by the board in March 2011. The project summary, this is a first floor addition, approximately 1,600 square feet, a 347 square foot storage room, which is demonstrated on this section right here. It's behind the new excavated garage, which is proposed, and the garage will be 789 square feet, a new 3-car garage, and a facade remodel. The existing property is approximately 19,000 square feet in size. It's irregular in shape, as you can see on the existing and the proposed site plan. It's in the R1R zone. There are several unpermitted items at the rear, which include some barbecues, a structure, and retaining walls at the rear. All are proposed to be removed except the retaining walls, which are demonstrated over here, which I will talk about a little bit later on in my presentation. There are 8 coastline oaks. 1 is on site, and 7 are on the adjacent parcels. The urban forester has commented the proposed floor additions will not affect the protected specimens. However, the urban forester has commented that during when these retaining walls, if they ever do come in for a permit, she would like to review its effect on the protected specimens at the rear. Staff's analysis in regards to site plan, relatively the footprint of the addition is largely the same from the previous. However, there has been a decrease of 231 square feet. The board in the previous meeting had comments in regards to the excavated garage and the driveway about the island effect of this piece of land that was left from the excavated garage. And they had reconfigured the retaining walls, which this one right here would be at max would be 30 feet in height. I believe the lowest would be 18 inches, and then there would be 2 consecutive retaining walls that are perpendicular to Eilinita, which would help successfully achieve this comment and concern from the board from the previous meeting. The unpermitted walls at the rear, they are to the board's review. However, there's a lack of information. Not much details are provided. All it says is, 3-foot high wall maximum per separate permits later on, or per separate permit. Overall, the massive scale, it doesn't appear as bulky as the first time as the board's review. However, while it is a little bit improved, staff doesn't believe the design has been simplified or significantly revised to the board's concern, what they addressed in the first meeting. Building design detail, a slightly smaller amount of precast veneer has been proposed. As you can tell, a lot of it has been replaced at the garage to match the slope, maybe kind of anchor it to the grade. Around the windows, it has been reduced. The previous one did have a lot more, which was around the windows, and it had a stucco garage, but they've kind of moved it down here to kind of anchor it down per the board's recommendation. The new windows on the window schedules just state that they're going to be block frame to be recessed and be treated with external grids. Maybe this is a question we can ask the applicant. I'm not too sure if these are supposed to be recessed. It's not clear to understand if it is recessed, what type of surrounds, or how is this going to work as far as when they. It's unclear how the plane is from these windows when it does meet the stucco and the exterior finish. In summary, overall, the design is largely the same as the first board's review. While the amount of and location of precast has been modified, the resulting design is heavy in appearance, doesn't appear fit with the neighborhood. The only other modifications that the applicant has introduced was a reduce of one bay window, which used to be on, I guess, the left side of that rendering over there, and I guess the reduced amount of precast veneer, and there has been a slight reduction in floor area. On to the previous conditions from the previous meeting. I'm just going to go over a few that I believe that should be highlighted. This one's in concerns of massing. I'm just going to go over this one. The roof design should be simplified. The various roof forms run into each other in awkward ways and should be simplified and better integrated. Staff's address as far as what the applicant has proposed. An attempt has been made to address the concern by removing one bay window. While the attempt is marginally better, the complex roof design is largely the same. The roof plan is right here for this proposal, and it should be in the same location and where the old plans are. The other one I want to highlight as far as the board's conditions and how the applicant has addressed it, or maybe staff's comment on it. Condition number 13, the project should incorporate a simplified design and introduce elements that complement the immediate neighborhood. Angle walls in the front make it visually complicated and can be toned down for a better fit. Materials should also be simplified. The overall design of the house is largely the same as the board's first review. A single window was removed, and the amount of precast of the veneer on Eilinita facing elevation was reduced. Attempts made do not appear to achieve the board's direction on simplifying the design and introducing elements that complement the immediate neighborhood. Staff's recommendation, the applicant doesn't appear this design or this application has appropriately addressed the character or to try to match the character of the neighborhood. The plan division recommends denial of this project. Before I conclude my presentation, staff did receive one inquiry from the adjacent neighbor. His concerns were similar to the same one, was in regards to dust and runoff. The next comment I would like to make, the applicant has indicated to me he has provided photographs of the retaining walls at the rear, and he would like to provide to the board when he can approach. This concludes staff's presentation, and available for questions.
I have one question. Can you explain a little bit about the retaining wall by the driveway? talk a little bit about it, because I don't see that on the plan nor on the section. On the perspective, it seems like it's stepping,
Right.
but it's not shown as it is stepping.
Shown, right?
Not that, I'm talking about I'm talking about this.
Right. It's this retaining wall right here. The top of the wall, it shows it being from the finished floor,
6 inches.
1226.5 to 1227. So it is about 1.5 feet, 18 inches.
And when you look at here, basically flat here, right? That's what it's showing. I'm trying to understand and that's the profile that we're looking at.
Section through driveway, section 2. Let's just kind of follow this through here.
It's this piece.
Right.
And then
I do not see a section call out right now on the site plan. Maybe that's something we can clarify, because I can see the section call outs for 1 and 3.
yeah, it's this guy appears right there and some.
1 and 3 on the A4.
There's only two.
Yeah, it's probably
Okay, I think that was in response to where this used to be high and it kind of looked like a big planter, the island effect we were talking about. This is probably more than picking up and going up, so it flattened it and back and then stepped it up. That's what I gathered.
Well, the last thing I'd like to add, the reduced rendered perspective is my scan, so it doesn't look as bright, as brilliant as this. So that's my scan. I printed out, so that's mine.
Yeah, it's good to see the large ones.
Don't
now.
quit your day job. You can't work. Have you seen it? I couldn't even tell
It's a
anything.
little muddy.
Thank you, anyways. It was a good effort.
I had to
own up
take that.
to it.
Okay, I guess at this point we have one card. We'll open the public discussion. Mr. Gary Akopian.
Good afternoon, board members, honorable chair, and I like welcome to the board. Hope you're going to be easy on us.
Thank you. I'll try my best.
My name is Gary Akopian, and I designed the project.
Can you also please
close up.
mention your address?
Yeah. For the records, I reside in Glendale, and I have an office in Glendale, 635 West Colorado, Unit 121. I want to be brief and concrete, bring up an issue of the roofs. That was a major issue. The idea is to simplify. I understand that was very busy at the first time, and I did my best to simplify the roof structure and at the same time do less pop outs. Can I just go to the board and show it?
If you want to
Yeah.
approach, sure.
So as you see here, it's too busy, too many lines and shapes. So the idea was to simplify this, to bring into the one roof, And at the end, we get this picture. Basically, just one plain structure in the front. We keep octagonal shape dining room since it gives a character to the building. It's like a trademark of the building. So we kept that. Simplified the fenestration pattern, and also in order to connect these two levels together, we just wrap up that garage with that same veneer that we have on the top, so it becomes like one solid unit together with that viscount on the first floor. And also, yeah, we took those pieces of veneer out, so like columns. It's not its surface elements. I don't want to see elements of viscount with that veneer. That second concern was, yeah, I understand this is not design. It's just attached there. So what we did, we just break up into the levels so we could have some kind of atrium. Amphitheater. And with this, we could bring a building to the front and make it more visual from the street, so giving more curb appeal. There's 2 3-footer retaining walls, and then one 18 inches high, which is complements to 18 inches high on the other side of the driveway, the same type of curb. And we don't have any veneers on the walls, those retaining walls on both sides of the garage. This is the way to emphasize structure rather than surroundings. And besides, it's going to be so busy if we have so many of those veneers on the other part of the front. Now, the third issue was, this is a technical issue. It was about this retaining wall. So I've got some information, so you could look at it and make your judgment. It's not more than 3 feet high walls, and those are crib walls. Like it's gravity walls. It's not a retaining walls. They don't have a foundation. So this is the pictures that those are interlocking.
I think probably you need to step by. Thank you.
Those are interlocking units, concrete units, and a crib wall. Gravity wall. There's not cantilever retaining walls. So they don't have a foundation. They can't. They can't be. There is some trees, oak trees. They can't hurt that roots go in there since it's a surface walls. This is about it. Yeah.
Any questions? I have one question in terms of when you read the staff's comments, and it seems like the staff feels that you haven't substantially met the requirements or the comments that were made last time. What's your general kind of feeling in terms of how close you came to meet the majority of the conditions?
I actually have another version of the same project, but it drastically changing a curb appeal. I'm further reducing this bump out in the front. Maybe I could show you.
Well, that I don't.
But it's.
But evaluate that.
Yeah. I feel like I'm losing the character of the building if I go further, reducing those bays and bay windows on that particular side of the front. So I tried it. I feel it's not good. So I believe this is at golden middle.
Yeah, but do you feel that the building kind of blends into the neighborhood?
Obviously, yes. There is few buildings in that particular area that has the same character, actually same pattern of. They have a garage on the first, on a downstairs, and they have a building on upstairs. So basically, yeah, it's a common pattern. We could say about 3-4 buildings within like 500 lineal feet of the street.
You have pictures of them?
We had that pictures before.
Is it within this set of
It's supposed to
pictures?
be on the first time when we submit the plans.
Yeah, if you like to review.
Yes, can I?
Well, thank you. That's basically concludes my question.
I have,
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more question.
thank you. First and foremost, since I was absent at the last meeting, I didn't get the chance to appreciate Mr. Malekian's chairmanship and congratulate Mr. Zarifian for getting elected to the chair's position. Had I been here, you would have had a unanimous vote on that. I congratulate you for that. Sir, I had 2 questions, although I was not part of the board last time when this project was presented, but I watched the tape and 2 issues stand out as far as concerns from the neighbors, primarily. One was the dust issue. Now, provided that everything goes forward, and the owner is allowed to build the house that he is suggesting. One is, as I said, the dust issue. How is that being planned to handle? And the second one is the retaining wall. I'm not sure if it is the same retaining wall that you're talking about here or the other retaining wall, or basically the concern that a neighbor had regarding a retaining wall. He was saying something, if it rains, then the mud will be carried over to his property. That part of the project, was it ever addressed?
For the first, a dust issue.
Right.
Now, there's a simple way. We choose the simplest way to resolve that. So we provide the landscaping right at that corner where the neighbors meet, along the neighbor's side. Mm-hmm. So basically, we resolve, and also we're having the 18 inches high wall. So it gives us enough space and enough height to just block that dust coming from the driveway. So and also vegetations will help, will change drastically the conditions. I can't recall the second issue. I don't know what it was, who brought up and what it was about.
I haven't watched the videotape, maybe been a week or two. It may have been the retaining walls that are adjacent to his property. It might have been the one that caused the island effect from the previous submittal. I believe that's what he may have been referring to as far as retaining walls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I have a question.
One more question.
Looking at the photos of the neighboring structures, a lot of them are very simple. They lack the ornamentation that you're building, just trying to project. You're saying the hexagonal room is to create character. Do you believe that the houses in the neighborhood are too plain, and so you want to be a little different from them?
I don't have that feeling that we're very different from neighbors. I don't know. Absolutely, it's the same bungalow type houses, and also I've seen some of them having the same viscount, like stone or brick. The scale is same scale, 1 stories and not high, and articulations are almost same. I could see building has some bay windows, some accents on the front. I don't feel like we're like from a moon.
Well, but you mentioned that you were trying to give the building a trademark, give it some character.
With that,
so are you trying to be different from what is existing in the?
Yeah, but within the styles, within the
realm of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking same language with other neighbors. I'm not
right.
trying to say.
But you're very different,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This concludes the public discussion. So I think we're open for comments. If maybe Mr. Malekian can start if you're ready.
For me, I always kind of first thing that I do is I start reading the staff's recommendation, and then I go down the list and I try to understand why. I mean, it takes a lot for staff to say to deny the project. That right off the bat, I put extra effort trying to understand what was the reason for that. When I start comparing the two projects, the old and the new, I tend to understand why that was recommended. Generally, when we recommend certain conditions and we give certain ideas to the designer architects, we try to help give them direction of how to solve certain problems that we see. There are certain hidden problems that we didn't come out, unfortunately, and tell them, which now I see that looking at the rendering, it's very clear for me to kind of putting the two photos together. What was the main reason for us to start talking about the retaining wall and looking at? Nowhere in the neighborhood that I saw was an excavated garage, that it was somewhat of a semi-subterranean type of a garage that I could find. There was no examples of that. What it did was, what it's doing is it's creating a mass that it's sitting on top of a hill, which again it's accentuated by a carving of a section where the garage goes down to the street level. And therefore you create certain mass of retaining and stepping of the slope in order for the grade to get up to that level. It's definitely a doable project, and definitely the size, 200 square feet or 230 square feet of reduction. I honestly, if I was them, I would put it back because I really don't see where it got lost. I think it was just, if somebody's going through the expense of building this, I would try to get it as big as I can, but at the same time, the other elements that are being introduced, like the trademark issues and the roof and other stuff, that according to the applicant that it was simplified. Honestly, I had to ask, Dennis, which is the new and the old, because I really can't tell the difference between the new and the old. If you compare it, if you take the old and the new out and then you kind of switch them around and put them in front of you, you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. So I think the idea is that simplifying the roof is really simplifying the roof, not taking out one small element out of the picture, and not just taking out 200 square feet and say on paper and on the numbers that we have less square footage. That's kind of, if I was the owner, I would get frustrated because I'm going to go through this expense and just to, satisfy our comments, let's get rid of a couple of square feet here and there, the end of the day, really not achieving anything. I think it's the issue is that the intent of designing a building that fits with the neighborhood and having elements that are within the neighborhood, I don't see that. I think this is going to be a very unique house, that it's going to stand out. Because of its massive roof and because of its ornate materials and other approaches that it was taken to achieve that garage and achieve the building and everything. So to me, going back to all the 13 conditions, honestly, I think the vote was really missed on that. So I'm not sure how to solve the problem without going back to the drawing board and start commenting from scratch and giving some advice of different things. Retaining wall doesn't bother me, honestly. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it works. I don't see a problem with that, unless in building and safety has a problem, which that's their issue. But as far as I'm concerned, I think, and as far as the square footage, if it's going to come back or whatever we're going to decide on, I would get as big as I can. But I guess the design needs to be a lot more humble and a lot more simplified. And when that happens, then I think you can get all the square footages and all this, whatever you need. That's my comment.
I think I'm a little more hopeful that this is going in the right direction. I looked at the new plans versus the old plans, and I could see that you'd taken some of our comments and tried to integrate them into the new design. I think originally, I remember we had seen some photos of houses that had two-story with the garage in the bottom, and they're not in this package for some reason, but that withstanding, what I saw in this package of the neighborhood is a lot of ranch-style homes. They're very simple. They're very, as you said, humble. They have certain elements that come out from the plane, and the roof lines vary, but they don't vary to this extent where they're saying, I need a trademark element. Like you had mentioned, this hexagonal room is going to be your trademark, the character of your building. That's something that this neighborhood, I think, doesn't have. They don't have trademark elements. They have just houses that are quiet, that they kind of just house people, and they blend in with the landscapes, and they all just kind of go along the street, and they are unique in the sense that the layout's different. The windows work. They have good layouts, and so that it's not about elements. It's more about a general mass. And I think our original commenting was about there's too many elements on this building. There's too many things going on. Taking elements off, just by taking them off, it helps that comment, but it doesn't address the bigger issue, which is the whole house wants to be designed so that it works together. It's massing study 101. How does a mass go together that creates a space that when you walk into it and you look at it, it feels like this is how it's supposed to be. This is how this space captures light or movement or the activities inside of it. It just makes sense, and it's not just a bunch of pieces that are added together to create the rooms and the spaces. For me, the main level, the house itself, it looks like still a bunch of pieces that are stuck together. And I think because the roof plan is so complicated that you look at that and you immediately go, well, what are these things, and why is this roof plan that has so many lines part of it? Because you have all these elements, and that's partially why that happens. Where I find hopeful is that what's more successful for you was the bottom part of and the curb appeal part of it, where we had the island effect comment because of the retaining wall situation, being skinny, being high, being a CMU block, and as you said, it was kind of like a space that wasn't really designed and thought out. Now you've actually thought about it, you've made it lower in the beginning, and it goes into a retaining wall. You have planting opportunities at every level. That's more interesting. It's more gracious towards the street and the neighbors, and it gives you more opportunity to introduce elements that can soften that wall as well. So I like the planting plan that has been shown, although I do think there's an error in it. It's not showing all the different planting areas, but I think it would work whether it had them correctly shown or not. So I'm not too concerned with the planting plan. The planting palette is fine. And then this planter that you have in the center that you've created now by moving the walkway off to the right side of the building and having someone who wants to approach the building have a nice approach. They don't walk straight into the building. They walk around this planter. The planter creates a screening to the street. I think that's very successful, and I think it creates a nice approach to the building. So all these things that you're doing, maybe you don't think that it's creating something else, but it really is. And so that's where the design comes in. That's where we say, okay, this is well designed versus it's not designed or not thought out. And the idea of not putting the stone on the retaining walls, on the planter walls, I think it also is a good idea because you don't want to have stone everywhere. You want it to be in just certain areas that say this is like where the building would come down and be the foundation of the building. So I like that you've brought the stone down to the garage level, and then you stopped it at a certain sill height level or above sill height in some cases, because that does say that this is about the building growing out of the earth, and that was one of my comments earlier, was that this building wants to feel like it's sitting on a base, and the base being your garage. So I think that was successfully done. I still have the issue of the garage dying into the window in the living room. It's still kind of that disjointed effect where if the top half of the house doesn't look like it's designed, the massing, the windows, everything isn't designed into what's going on below it, that it does feel like this house got just plopped on top of the lower level garage. And I think that, that was a main issue of my comments in the beginning, and it's not just something you can just take the bay off and say, okay, I've addressed that issue. Maybe sometimes it takes a total, let's throw out that idea and start new, just thinking of new ways of solving this so that it's a whole different approach, because that gets you to think differently about something and not just take off pieces and shift things around. When you have this many comments that we had, I think you really should just take a whole different look at it and then come back to where you started from, instead of trying to take things out and try to get to a new place. It would be easier. Again, when staff says denial, I look at that very carefully in terms of how they look at these projects and how I took it into consideration, and I do think that the main house hasn't changed enough for me to support it in proving it.
And I think you had a great point that it's so is a completely different volume than the top, and they're not kind of working together. I think that image is a really an interesting house you posted.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a great example of how the lower section and the upper building, they work together. They're the same architecture, same character, same elements are kind of coming down and it's becoming a base. Whereas in this, you have three different elements. You have the garage level, you have the building, and then you have the roof level. With that, these are all working together, and I think that's what it's missing, that the garage on its own could become a whole structure, a very modern, very contemporary structure, and then the building on the top, it can just be taken out and placed in a flat land somewhere, and it's not grounded, and the element that is grounding the building, which is the garage, it's completely in a different
the vocabulary
of the second floor.
I think I really respond to the bottom vocabulary because to me the neighborhood is more about that feel. It doesn't have these high-peaked roofs, it doesn't have these elements that are stuck onto it. So, take the railing, take the bottom garage doors, take the planters, and kind of build from that and go up. But don't go up like you're trying to soar to the heavens, because that's not what this neighborhood is about. You want to go up and build maybe like into it where it's more of a horizontal ranch-style house that becomes like how the neighborhood feels. So unfortunately, I know you're trying to make it more of a character and put that into the house, but I think the character will this will be a beautiful house with beautiful elements, and the materials will be great on this kind of a house, but you don't want to put these characteristics into it that don't belong in this vocabulary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not want anyone, although I appreciate all the work that the staff puts into all these projects and presents a recommendation at the end, I do not want anyone to leave here thinking that every time and in every situation, whatever the staff recommends, whether approval or denial, that's the way the board votes, because that compromises the entire existence of this board. And it has happened in the past that the staff has recommended one thing and the board has voted on something else, or made recommendations to something else. I appreciate the fact that although, only minimal 230 or 250 square feet was decreased from the original plan, and some of the 13 recommendations were taken into consideration. Without going and repeating the previous comments that my colleagues made here, I, too, see this project being very busy. Although I'm not saying that it should look like a retirement home, however, though, the roof levels, one on top of each other, it makes it quite busy in itself. It makes it stand out. I do understand that people want to build their homes and give it some specific or special characteristics. However, though, there is an understanding, and there are several ordinances and laws in this city that prohibit the extremes. And because of that, we always have to keep in mind the harmony of the neighborhood. The humbleness, if that's the word that needs to be used in this situation, in this case, then should be taken into consideration. Again, I understand and I appreciate, as I said, I watched the previous meeting of March of 2011. The issue of the family being expanded was raised, and that is very appreciated. However, though, expanding or using the maximum space to build a house that is within the perimeters of the law, that is not an issue for me. I'm not concerned about that. My only concern, as I said, is the design being too busy. If it can be simplified, I don't know which way the board eventually will decide on this, but my approach to this would be to give it another shot and simplify the busyness, take out the element of being busy. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I appreciate absolutely the kind of measures that you have taken to meet some of the comments and try to work with the conditions that we set forth in the last meeting. I think I realized what the issue is, and it's very much in line with what was said, and I try to kind of make it very sort of simple and concise so that it won't be sort of complicated. I think if there is a typology type of what this neighborhood is like, because it's a hillside kind of picking up from the street and going up, but I'll draw a couple of small sections here. If this is the street level, it picks up, basically the hillside starts almost from the street level, and then the houses are built right at the similar point that probably is consistent throughout the street. So this element is always kind of there, and the houses are put on top of this little hillside, and then you come back and it picks up and goes way up there, or starts to go higher. I think the problem is that if you think that, let's say, the garage is carved into some sort of simple drawings, into this hillside, and this is the garage, and then the house is here, then this garage belongs to the hillside. It's not part of the house. You can either express this so that the hillside is kind of continuous and it goes on and belongs to the neighborhood, and the house is just like the other houses. You can simplify it still. I think the roof issues, everything else is true, is like a lot broken up and in many more pieces than any other house in the neighborhood. So that still kind of can be simplified. But I think the three elements that was mentioned was that part of this plinth all of a sudden comes down in the way the house is done and becomes a third element. If you had only two, whether you bring the house and let this be part of the house, or let the garage belong to the hillside and the house belongs to the top of the hill, then you would break it down in a very effective way. The problem is that this almost has become like the house, and then there is this front retaining walls. So you have, by the nature of having three elements, the house looks more complicated and bigger because of that garage kind of being in between. Partially belongs to the ground and partially belongs to the house, but connects itself to the house and hence makes it much bigger. So that's part of the reason that the house appears bigger than it is. So if you imagine this was simplified to be almost part of the hill that was continuous in the neighborhood, and the house was that could have been a big plus to break it down into a smaller house. So I think, as it was kind of mentioned before, having this three parts rather than the two doesn't work in your favor in this design. So I would also think that by simplifying the shape and parts and roof of the house, also you would make it more consistent with the neighborhood. But those are my biggest comments beyond everything else, the 13 issues that were kind of talked about in the last meeting. I would think that the scale is probably one of the biggest issues, making this less consistent with the rest of the neighborhood. So I would let the board make a motion if there is
Excuse
consensus.
me. Yes, if I may, I just want to inform the board that according to the zoning code, you do have a few choices as to how you decide tonight. Of course, you can always approve with conditions. On a return for redesign, you can choose to deny the project or ask for another return for redesign. If the project is denied, then the applicant is free to appeal that decision to council. In either case, if the project is denied or you request a third and last return for redesign, in either case, even if you choose to deny the project, the applicant can come back before you with a revised design.
I'm sorry.
Can you run it one more
Did you
time?
say we have three?
Is it
actually, for two
changed?
redesigns?
There was a period where it was like in 2008 the code was 2 strikes and you're out.
So when did this change?
Yeah.
You know, it
Must be
changed
very, very
earlier than staff had been instructing you, so we apologize for that.
Uh-oh.
So we can return for redesign.
You
for
can
one more.
return for redesign, but just so that you know, a denial doesn't preclude the applicant from coming back. It just allows the applicant to go to a hearing at council if they so choose. That is the only difference between those two decisions for you tonight. If you do choose to return for redesign, then the project would come, if a project came back within 6 months, it would be looked upon as the same project, and then the only choice you would have on the third time would be to approve with conditions, or to deny the project. But if you deny the project, then it would come back as a brand-new project.
Okay, well, I thought that we only had two. The second time, we had only choice of deny, and that's what we did 2 weeks ago or a month ago. But if that was the case, then, my comments, I would be more direct and more precise if we're going to go with the return for redesign, so I can give them a little bit more direction of what I would want to see versus a denial. But then,
If you'd like, I can read so far what we have. What we have is similar to Condition 13. The project should incorporate a simplified design and introduce elements that complement the immediate neighborhood. Angled walls in the front make it visually complicated and can be toned down for a better fit. We also heard tonight something a little bit different than we heard last time. The garage appears to be a separate design from the house design. Either separate the garage and the house so that the garage belongs to the slope, or fully integrate the house with the garage below.
should we ask the applicant to come and see if they actually understand what we've talked about? Instead of giving more conditions, adding it on top of the 13 that I don't think was addressed, and add 2 more on top of that. I don't know if it's going to help the situation, or we just they feel that they can appeal this and have better success. I don't know.
I think it would be nice to have a chance to hear what the applicant might say. Based on everything that you've heard, I'll just open the...
I thank everyone for the suggestions, and I understand fully what's the issue is. The idea of blending that garage into the slope and separating building from the garage, to me, it's an interesting idea. It's only we need to incorporate more of landscaping into that area, so we could have a part. Pardon?
If I may, you picked up only one point out of many discussions, but that's just one, thought of how you can approach it. But there's 13 items here, and we're going to add 1 or 2 more. The question is that, do you understand all of these, that the building needs to be simplified, not just to complicate it more? I think, personally, if this design, you shove the garage into the hill and then kind of create a retaining condition, bring the dirt over that, and creating basically a bunker, and then be able to build over that. I don't even know if he can do that because he's keeping some of the existing structure there. So creating a bunker, concrete, with the retaining that you can put dirt over so that it slopes back up again. It's a complicated...
Yeah, but the issue is being honest, and I understand.
No. That's just one idea. But the question is, do you understand that we're trying to simplify the building not complicate it more. Now, that garage is one component of several other issues that you have. You have the roof, you have the building itself, you keep on bringing this octagon shape, which has nothing to do with anything. I mean, all of those are creating these very complicated architecture that we're trying to simplify that, and we're not trying to micro-design the project for you, but we're trying to tell you this thing is a very complicated building for what you're trying to achieve. It just becomes very complicated.
I promise you'll not recognize the building the next time. So.
Oh, that's the new one.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to help you because I don't know if you think that it would help you another. We can.
I got the point. There's one very concrete point you brought up. We're supposed to be honest in architecture, either or, not in the between. I got a message. So I understand. Either I blend in that garage into that landscaping and put in separate building so it looks separate, or incorporating garage with the building. That's
which I think the latter one is not going to help the building mass because you have such a big frontage, 3-car garage. The other houses have 2-car, small kind of pieces that when they become part of the building, it's kind of small and humble and low scale, small scale. But this one, the better thing, in my opinion, would be to let the garage not to connect itself to the house so that it helps breaking the scale of the house down rather than...
Although there's a big issue, it's technically very, very hard to achieve.
I mean, we're not going to. We're going to deliberate between us. But I just wanted to make sure that you understand where we're going with this. If the return for redesign is going to help redesign, okay.
It's always when it hurts, I understand.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad.
Because I differ. I think that where we had the original drawing and we had a lot of issues with that didn't connect. The house didn't speak to the garage. He's taken the garage and created an element there that I think he can build upon to create a house that has the same vocabulary as the garage, and that would become integrated.
I know. You know what the problem is? The problem is that where is this drawing? That unfortunately it's very small, but the garage doesn't complete itself as a complete plinth. It misses the corner of the house.
Right.
So the plinth stops and the house keeps going. So part of the house is sitting on the hill and part of it's sitting on the plinth. So nothing completes itself. That's part of the problem. You know, so this is the garage stopping right at the center of the window. If this was going as a complete plinth, or it was part of the house that came down, which a lot of the houses have done, and that becomes the garage. This is kind of the garage becoming a plinth and stopping.
I think.
So it's a bit confused in another way.
Well, why not stop that addition at the garage and then come back so that what is added that gives the character to the house becomes part of the garage, and then the rest of the mass of the house goes away.
It can be done. Yeah, it can be done. As I mentioned, the house can come down, but if the garage is that big and the house comes down, it's still
that was my main point. Why does the garage bisect the window?
I think the architecture, the detailing, and all the elements there that are being used for the garage needs to be carried over to the building itself. It doesn't necessarily have to follow the lines, nor the windows need to line up, but as long as the architecture is the same. Because right now, I'm looking at this. These are two different buildings that I'm looking at. To me, it's completely different. To me, look at the railings. Look at the way that the railing is drawn. Like these are like picking. So all of these, I mean, to me, these detail of the railing is amazing. I think it's beautiful. I love this, the way that this is designed. This is there. So take an eraser, erase this building in the back, and then get rid of all these breakup on the buildings. Create a very simple roof line that does the roof doesn't take. See, right now, to me, you have one level, 2 levels, and 3 levels. this is as massive as the garage itself and the building.
No, there's no question. I think the building should be simplified.
And by adding certain architectural elements on the plan that they're trying to force, it forces itself to create certain roof lines that creates more of a mess. My recommendation, take this architecture, whatever you have, whatever the railings there are, use that as your base of starting the top. Get the window, this window is nice. I like this window. I don't know about this, I don't know about the door, I don't know about all of this octagonal roof line. All of that, simplify that, okay? If you're going to use this as a base, stone for the base, let that be the base for the stone. Don't start using it as a veneer or a wainscoting of the building itself. Then you're, the base of the building, if it's stone, let that be the base. Then on the top, let this be the building that it's sitting on there, but then use the same architecture and same character.
That's what I'm saying. I think the problem here is that the house, geometrically, there is no relationship between the house
exactly.
and the garage. So what it becomes is the house, the garage, and the
right.
base.
But if you use the same detailing of all of them together,
but I think there should be a continuity of this belonging to an element.
I think the massing needs to work together.
Like for example, just kind of giving you some thoughts, and we're not here to design it, but just the thought. Imagine that you have this wooden post coming up. Then you get a post and beam detail of rafters coming out here and creating a gable, not a hip roof, but a gable roof that extends over, that gives a dimensional overhang that comes in front, and you have this post and beam detail, which I see that happening with the railing and everything, and that's the character that I'm seeing. Maybe that's certain lighter elements there that are coming into the picture, and that creates maybe some exposed rafters that are coming out that brings this details and other stuff that it kind of obviously the garage is in a different plane, the building is in a different plane, but certain elements can extend out and create.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, the vocabulary translates.
You have these columns, you have these posts that are coming out, you have this roof line and maybe, certain things that are coming out, and maybe a base or something, certain element there that is coming out, these rafters are, and then that kind of works with the detail of what you have. I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, it just brings certain characters rather than creating octagonal shape that has nothing to do, or creating these roof lines that are trying to
I think
cover
we're talking about the same thing.
We are, yeah, exactly.
But there should be, if the garage is part of the house, there needs to be a stronger connection between. Otherwise, the garage becomes its own element. It doesn't belong to the base or the house, so it kind of is in between.
Pay attention to details that you're putting in the door, and the way that you're addressing the windows. And then all of a sudden you have this very traditional off-the-shelf door. And then all of a sudden you introduce this octagon shape. So all of these, even though they're just very simple gestures, but when you're looking at it all together, you have all these different details that you're trying to put together, and you're saying, okay, approve this. So we're here to look at these little details and say, you know what, this doesn't work with this, but this works with this, but yet this doesn't work with that. These don't work together. This door and this doesn't work with any of them. So it's just kind of putting all of these, kind of looking at it and take a clean slate and put all these little things together, and you got a project there.
Yeah, I agree. The railing and the garage and the planters, to me, that erase the building on top and then take that detailing and put it into the building.
Right. And as far as putting the garage in the front, tucking it in, what it's going to happen is, personally, I think if you have the setback, you're going to create a garage that has this kind of you're going to create a retaining condition. This is going to be a slab. Then you're going to backfill this up to the flat
I
area.
wasn't suggesting to
And then you
put
create
the
that.
garage. No, I'm just using that as
Oh, okay.
conceptual.
So that's just thought. Don't say this is what they asked for.
DRB didn't
This is what this was just a discussion.
I'm just trying to say that if your carving looks like as if you carved part of the hillside
Right.
way to create.
Yeah.
But one more thing I like to. Sorry if this takes too long, but I think it's important to. If you look at this picture of the existing, this one, you can see that that little hillside that starts almost ends at this property. Do you see that big retaining wall going back? So if in the same direction, if this is in plan, if this is the hillside and the houses are here, so this is the street, and you go up here. This all of a sudden ends right there, and the next house is at the lower level. So, which this line represents that retaining wall.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So there is a possibility that this house can
Move that line back.
move this line over and create this garage that is as if the house, which is this, comes down at the corner of this hillside. So your house basically ends the hillside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think they lucked out on that.
Yeah. So that's why you have this little island piece here, because right beyond the island there is no hillside. It's gone. So there's an opportunity for you to use that to your advantage and kind of make the garage what makes the transition to the hillside to end. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it's so. Where is island? So if this was this little island that we were talking about, so instead of this being a carving like that, it could be a carving that takes out the corner of the hillside and lets this house to come down as a corner. We're just suggesting things that could possibly become good things to think about.
I think that the rendering that you did is something we can really respond to, because it shows all the different angles. And so one of our comments in the first meeting was to present a rendering to us, and that's now helping us see all the potential that we can have on this property. I think that maybe it's going to help you as well get to that final stage where we say, this is it. This is finally what we're talking about, hopefully. Or do massing models. I mean, it really helps to see the property, because you are carving out space that isn't there right now.
If I may, there do appear to be a number of conditions from your last meeting that focus on presentation materials and information, that some of that information has been provided for tonight's meeting. It sounds like some of that information you would like to see again for a revised design, such as condition number 1, provide a presentation that compares the proposed perspective with the existing house to accurately represent the proposed mass and scale relative to the existing house. And number 2, a three-dimensional modeling of the entrance is recommended to assist in understanding the garage entrance area, the garage area, retaining wall, and stair with accurate elevations. A demolition plan has been provided, so we wouldn't need to include condition number 3. Condition number 4, the landscape plan has been provided. Condition number 5, I think you have stated that their redesign has accomplished eliminating the island effect between the two properties. Condition number 6, an accurate plan which demonstrates top of wall. Some of that information has been provided, but some of it hasn't. So if the board chooses, you can continue to include that particular condition. Condition number 7 is something I think that we've heard from you tonight. The roof design should be simplified. Various roof forms run into each other in awkward ways and should be simplified and better integrated. Condition number 8, the materials at the garage seem to have been accomplished. 9, a revised color rendering. That, I think, can be taken care of in conditions 1 and 2. Condition number 11, because there are still some inconsistencies, we would advise you to keep the condition that states plans and all presentation materials should be accurate and consistent with each other to present a consistent design, because that helps remind staff to work with the applicant to make sure that's accomplished. Condition 12, window schedule providing detail of the installation, operation, and treatment. We'd also recommend to retain that because the plans were confusing to staff. And this is just all most of these are presentation materials. And then condition number 13 seems to speak to the bulk of the design discussion that you've had. Project should incorporate a simplified design and introduce elements that complement the immediate neighborhood. Angled walls in front make it visually complicated and can be toned down for a better fit. What we also have to add to that is that the garage appears to be a separate design from the house design. Either separate the garage and the house so the garage belongs to the slope, or fully integrate the house with the garage below. Also consider the possibility that the slope can be shifted over to allow the garage to accomplish the transition between the proposed project and the house to the east. We also heard from you a recommendation to provide character in the details and not in the shape and form of the house. So if that captures the spirit and content of your discussion, that would help us in whatever decision that you make to work together with the applicant.
I thought it was very well put. I don't know what the...
Yeah, I think it's very well put.
Yeah, and on a side note, I like to also mention this, that I appreciate Mr. Gary's willingness to work with our comments and your positive attitude in taking some of these comments. I know sometimes it takes even this board to understand something completely in order to give you a clear direction. But anyway, I like to mention that I appreciate your patience. Thank you. So if there is a motion...
I'll move to return for redesign with comments.
A second.
Okay, so there has been a motion for a return for redesign. This will be roll call. Board Member Keuroghelian?
Yes.
Board Member Malekian?
Yes.
Board Member Chahe?
Yes.
Mr. Chair Zarifian?
Yes.
That's 4-0 vote with Board Member Keuroghelians absent for this project to return for redesign.
I think there is a set of... The next item would be to approve the meetings.
Correct. We have minutes from the February 2nd
Thank you.
Design Review Board, and forgive me, not all 5 board members were here, but Board Member Keuroghelians, Malekian, Chahe, and Zarifian were here. So we can approve the minutes if you so choose with 3 board members.
There are only 2 of us.
There's 3.
Oh, 3 of us? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with
I
it.
think I'm fine with it too.
Yeah,
Do you have any comments?
I move to
No.
approve
Second.
minutes.
I have a motion by Board Member Malekian and a second by Board Member Chahe. Board Member Malekian?
Yes.
Board Member Chahe?
Yes.
Chair Zarifian?
Yes.
The motion passes 3-0. And we do have a few staff announcements. So if you don't mind, Stephanie.
First, I would perhaps Board Member Gallegos is not watching, but if he is, I'd like to wish him a happy birthday. In addition to that, I'd like to let you know that the Planning Community Development Department went to Council on Tuesday and presented a few items that would likely be of interest to you. One was a discussion on hillside ordinance. And the result of that discussion, because there had been some work done over the years to respond to some concerns that the current hillside ordinance was not quite sufficient. What the council decided was that each hillside neighborhood, in particular Adams Hill and Chevy Chase, have different issues that impact them, and that there didn't really seem to be a citywide fix, if you will, for the deficiencies, what was seen as deficiencies in the hillside ordinance. So they directed staff to address these issues more comprehensively as we move into the next community plan area, which at the meeting was discussed as to be South Glendale, all of the area of Glendale that's south of the 134 freeway. So that will be our next community plan area. The other item that was discussed was an issue that was discussed in 2007 and 2008 with the variety of issues that resulted in the design review, the changes to the design review board processes. And you may be interested to watch that piece. It's a fairly long piece, but the long and the short of it is that the council did compliment both design review boards in that they are very satisfied with the job that you're doing. The issue that was really before them to consider was view protection, and to add, does that needed to be added to the consideration of projects. So the council directed staff to come up with some options to include consideration of view protection as you consider projects. So they directed staff to consider adding that as part of the design review board process, as opposed to, say, as part of the conditional use permit process that all hillside properties have to go through. The view protection was really discussed in the context of hillsides as well. That's part of the reason that staff brought those two issues to the council together on the same night, so that because they are related. So staff will work to figure out how best to include those issues, and before we go to Planning Commission and come to you for your comments, we would go back to the City Council to get further and more specific direction on them, because as was discussed in the meeting on Tuesday and in previous discussions in 2007 and 2008, views are particularly difficult to address in any code and in any discretionary review process. So the council did say that they were aware of those difficulties, and staff will be taking that on to give them some options for how to address that.
Thank you. So I guess we're done and the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.